Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans, the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into a fresh, brand new episode of The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine. If you're not subscribed, go ahead, hit that subscribe button below for me. Also, be sure to leave a like, whether you are subscribed or not. I will be here on The Process every Tuesday and Thursday evening to break down the latest in Tide football recruiting news on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page. Things are getting pretty interesting when you look at the Tide's 2021 recruiting class and a huge weekend that is on tap for the Tide, as 3 of their top remaining 2021 targets are expected to be in Tuscaloosa. I will discuss the 3 guys who are expected and the impact this visit could have on their recruitment later on in the show, but I am going to get things started by talking about a couple of recruiting updates when it comes to the Tide's recruiting efforts and multiple recruiting classes. So with that being said, let's get the process started. Let's get these recruiting updates rolling with Nick Saban talking about the importance of the Iron Bowl from an in-state recruiting perspective. Basically, the 6-time national championship winning coach talked about how the rivalry makes kids inside the state choose sides between the Tide and the Tigers, and sometimes that choosing of sides manifests into a dream school for some of these kids. Be sure to check out more on that over at touchdowналabama.com as the 6-time national championship winning coach gears up for another big-time Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. Another update I want to provide you guys with surrounds an in-state commit for the Tide here in this 2021 recruiting class. When you look at 5-star athlete Quincy McKinstry, who put together an impressive performance on Friday against Oxford as the Pinson Valley Indians defeated the Oxford Yellow Jackets 34-2 in the Alabama State 6A classification state playoffs. And when we look at McKinstry's performance, I think it was very impressive, especially when you consider the fact that when you see McKinstry's highlights on most occasions, it is usually from an offensive perspective. We see him catching the ball as a wide receiver, but in these set of highlights, we see him putting together an impressive defensive performance. He covered one of the top wide receivers in the 2021 recruiting class, and Tennessee commit Rock Taylor did not give up a single reception on that night as the Pinson Valley Indians put up a great defensive performance as a whole, limiting the Yellow Jackets to only 2 points. So a huge congratulations goes out to the Pinson Valley Indians and the Alabama commit, who put together another impressive performance, this time on the defensive side of football. Be sure to check out his highlights over at touchdowналabama.com as well. The Tide was included in a top 12 released by an in-state 2022 athlete commit in Amari Kelly, a product of here at Trussville High School, a kid who plays on both sides of the football for the Huskies. I think this is a guy to pay attention to when you look at the 2022 recruiting class, especially looking at in-state recruits, as the 2022 recruiting class is pretty good when you look at the state of Alabama as a whole. Another update I want to provide you guys with comes from us here at touchdowналabama.com. We did release our latest mini documentary in the Day in the Life series as we profiled Deontay Lawson, the Tide's 2021 4-star linebacker commit. His Day in the Life is live on our YouTube page. Be sure to check out that if you have not already checked it out. So be sure to check out Deontay Lawson's Day in the Life, brought to you by touchdowналabama.com. Now we are going to dive into a couple of guys who are expected to visit Tuscaloosa on this weekend as the Crimson Tide take on the Auburn Tigers in the Iron Bowl. Let's look at the recruits who are expected to be in Tuscaloosa on this weekend, starting with the recruit we talked about on Monday, as he expressed he plans to be in Tuscaloosa on this weekend, and that is Arnold, the 2021 four-star defensive back out of John Paul II Catholic High School in Tallahassee, Florida. I think this is a great visit for the Crimson Tide. When you look at Arnold, he is a guy that wants to take some more visits before he makes an official decision. I think it says something that he wants to visit the University of Alabama before he makes that official decision. This is also a kid who wants to release a top 5 on December 1st, which is officially a week away from today. I think the Tide have already cemented their spot in that top 5, but I think this visit gives them the opportunity to separate themselves from the other 4 schools that are going to be included in Arnold's top 5 on December 1st. So be sure to just keep your eyes out on Arnold releasing that top 5 on next Tuesday. Another guy that is expected to be in Tuscaloosa on Saturday is a 4-star defensive end in Tumashe Delia out of Texas. Another recruit we have talked about a lot here on the process. When you look at Delia, we had his former head coach, his head coach during his first 3 years of high school, as he was expected to play at IMG Academy during his senior year, but he opted out of his senior year due to concerns over the spread of COVID-19. But his former head coach and Todd McVay said Delia is a kid who plays with a lot of intensity. When you watch his film, you see that he is very violent with his hands, so he brings a lot to the table from a defensive end perspective. But looking at Tumashe Delia's recruitment, I think this is another huge visit for the Crimson Tide, especially when you consider the fact that Delia was scheduled to take a visit to the University of Alabama in late March, but he was unable to do that because of the NCAA implementing that recruiting dead period in March, which stopped Delia from making and taking a lot of visits that he wanted to take because he wanted to make a decision before his senior season began. So we was looking at Delia announcing a decision in late July or maybe early August. But when the NCAA implemented a recruiting dead period out of the blue, basically stopping all visits, banning all unofficial visits and official visits, we saw Delia make a commitment to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But now that he is decommitted from the Buckeyes, he now has a top 3 of Florida, Texas A&M, and Alabama. We feel that the Crimson Tide are in a great position with Delia, so this visit will be huge for the Crimson Tide, with Delia looking to make an official decision during the early signing period, possibly most likely on National Signing Day, which will be on December 16th, as the Tide will go up against some SEC foes in the Florida Gators and the Texas A&M Aggies as they try to pull out a prospect from the state of Texas and Tumashe Delia. The Tide special teams coordinator and Texas area recruiter Jeff Banks is playing a huge role in Delia's recruitment. We will see how this one plays out. Delia says he has not made a decision yet. I think his decision is still up in the air between these schools. I think his recruitment is going to be pretty interesting heading into December 16th. The last guy I want to talk about who is expected to be in Tuscaloosa on this weekend is the most interesting, especially when you look at the Tide having 3 wide receivers committed already here in this 2021 recruiting class, having 4-star wide receiver Xavier Worthy on campus. Basically, in my mind, in my opinion, shows that the Tide definitely wants to add another wide receiver to their 2021 recruiting class after having wide receivers committed in Christian Leary, Ja'Cory Brooks, and AJ Hall. Of course, they are recruiting Worthy along with 4-star wide receiver Bryant Thomas Jr. out of Louisiana. But when you look at Worthy, he's actually a Michigan commit, which makes it even more interesting as the Tide looks to possibly make a late cycle flip. This is something that we have seen over the last couple of recruiting cycles a couple of times for the Crimson Tide. Going back to the 2018 recruiting class, we saw Jordan Battle flip his commitment from the Ohio State Buckeyes to the Crimson Tide on National Signing Day. Even most recently in the 2020 recruiting class. We saw 4-star running back Jace McClellan flip his commitment from the Oklahoma Sooners to the Crimson Tide. So it is not out of the realm to think that Xavier Worthy could be the next guy to flip his commitment to the Tide on National Signing Day, especially when you look at him taking this visit to Alabama on this weekend. It looks as if his recruitment is down to these two schools as he wants to make a decision on December 16th, National Signing Day, during the early signing period. So I think this is going to be another interesting recruiting battle that could cause a lot of talks and just pick up a lot of steam heading into National Signing Day. Another interesting recruiting storyline when you look at Worthy and what he brings to the table as far as being a wide receiver. He's a lengthy wide out, a guy with a lot of speed. He's a bit on the thin side, but that does not seem to matter at the wide receiver position. Just look at Alabama's current roster. Look at Devontae Smith that came in pretty small. He is actually pretty small now when you look at his frame, but you can tell that he has toned up, has added on some muscle, and I'm pretty sure Xavier Worthy will do that at the next level. Not even thinking about which school he goes to, no matter which school he goes to, I'm pretty sure he's going to tone up and add on some muscle to compete at the Division I football level. So things are going to be pretty interesting for the Crimson Tide on this Saturday as they host the Auburn Tigers, which is always an intriguing matchup. When you look at that game, it always seems to be that records are thrown out of the window. You just have to bring your hard hat. You just have to bring that intensity into that rivalry game. You have to bring your A game because both teams are going to play their heart out to bring out a win in the Iron Bowl, which will make the atmosphere in Bryant-Denny Stadium that much greater on this Saturday, which could help the Tide on the recruiting trail as the recruits get a chance to experience a Iron Bowl during the COVID-19 global pandemic era. But I am excited to watch the game. I'm excited to see how this particular visit impacts these guys' recruitment. So that is what I wanted to discuss on this episode of The Process. That is a wrap for this episode of The Process. Be sure to leave a like. Be sure to also subscribe if you're not. Also, be sure to head over to touchdowналabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles. Get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue. Also read our in-depth scouting reports on each Tide commit and each recruiting class, our in-depth draft projections when it comes to each Alabama player that is eligible to declare for the NFL draft in that given year. Also, be sure to check out our Locks and Leans recruiting prediction feature, as you will have an opportunity to get some inside information on why the staff here at touchdownalabama.com feel the Tide stands in this particular position for some of the top targets in each recruiting class. So be sure to pick up that subscription today. Then head to your Google Play Store or the Apple App Store if you have a Apple device. Be sure to download the Touchdown Alabama app so breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.
Process.